Welcome to this very special live edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. Now, tonight, as you've seen, if you saw the advertisement on Instagram, I have two special guests. Many of you are going to be familiar with the first one. He's a high-level practical shooter, travels around the country, and provides firearms instruction. Name is Tim Heron. I'm sure you've heard of him. But you may not be as familiar with my second guest. I didn't even know about the company until just recently. He's the marketing manager for Ace Virtual Shooting. I actually met him at Prairie Fire Beyond the Berm event in Nevada, where I actually had the opportunity to try out their system, which is a very bad idea. If you have an addicting personality, don't do it. It's like trying to do heroin one time. So with that, join me in welcoming Noah, Sinta, and Tim Heron to the show. How you doing, guys?
We're doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. There's been a lot of hubbub on the old interwebs about the Ace virtual reality stuff, and it's all earned because this thing's pretty special. So Noah, I'm gonna actually let you introduce yourself first, if you would take a moment and introduce who you are and how you got involved in this system.
Yeah, Dave. So my name's Noah Sinta. I'm the marketing manager here at Ace. I'm also a practical shooter myself. I shoot USPSA. I'm A class in PCC and carry optics, hopefully M or GM this year if things go my way. And how I got involved with Ace. So basically, there was a prototype version of Ace called VRPS or VR Practical Shooting that was out about 2 years ago. And it was created by our lead product developer named Aaron Lee. And basically during COVID, he liked to trap. So he lives in London and he likes to do practical shooting too. And so there's a problem there with the geography. So he had to travel to the United States, travel to other countries in Europe. And he wasn't really able to do that in COVID. So he developed VRPS and, really had the attention to detail in terms of the ballistics. But he was just a one-man crew and wasn't doing this for money. It was just kind of a hobby. I picked up that game as soon as I saw a video of somebody running around in their backyard shooting live stages. I was like, this looks awesome. I realized that VR is only, at the time was like $350 for a Quest 2. It didn't require a PC, all of that. And I was like, in my mind at that time, VR was $1,000, $2,000, and it was some crazy technology that I never tried. So I picked that up, became a power user, really loved the game, and, worked with him, just on a friendly level. I was like, oh, we should change this. We should add this. We should do this. And he took a lot of my advice, became good friends. And then last summer, there was kind of a good position for an opening there. And I joined, and kind of the rest is history. And basically everybody on our team are shooters, practical shooters, or military. And we really focus on the realism of the game and the attention to detail. So.
Okay. Tim, why don't you take a moment and reacquaint everybody with who you are?
So I'm Tim Heron, the owner and sole proprietor of Tim Heron Shooting LLC. So I've been a USPSA competitor, kind of at the upper levels. Started shooting in 2010. I've been kind of shooting at the upper levels since about 2015. I think I'm a 3 or 4 division GM now, and my primary source of income now, as a full-time traveling trainer. So I travel all over the United States, providing practical shooting and performance-based pistol shooting training to everything from hobbyists to competitors to law enforcement, you name it, I'll teach it. So, but for me, I saw who kind of got me going on this and got me interested in the system was an associate of mine, a guy by the name of Matt Little, who owns Graybeard Actual. Matt's also a very high level competitive shooter and trainer. And I think he's been kind of working with Ace, I think almost since like the beta system, and had it for quite a while. And so I sat down with Matt. Matt was telling me how great it was and all. And then of course, Matt strapped his headset on me and let me go to town with it, like over a weekend when he hosted me and AJ Zito for a class there back in December, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I saw a lot of viability for other things that we could do with it as well. So it interests me enough that as soon as I got home, the holidays were among us. So kind of got through the holidays, and it kind of made a couple of comments on Instagram, I think, that Noah kind of picked up on, where I was like, man, I'm very interested in that. I'm going to have to buy a setup and start working with it. So, and here we are.
90,000 virtual rounds later.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's winning the virtual reality reloading war, you or Matt?
I think Matt's up for right now, but I think Tim is fast approaching.
Yeah.
He said,
there we go.
We weren't counting the rounds properly up until, I want to say, 2 or 3 months ago. So Matt did have a lot more rounds before then, but they're not properly recorded. So
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Noah, why don't you set the stage for exactly what is Ace virtual reality? Like, what is the system?
Yeah, so Ace is a combination between software and hardware. So our VR app runs on the Meta Quest 2 and 3. This is a 3 right here. And for those of you that don't know, the Oculus, Meta Quest 2 and 3 are the most common VR headsets. You can buy them anywhere. And we kind of marry that with a handset proprietary that physically interacts with the controller mechanically. So it's got a real take-up. Let's see, there we go. Break and take-up. And about a 4-pound trigger is stock on there. Got a working magazine release. Weighs about 29 ounces with the controller. So we really tried to pair the physical hardware, the way it points and shoots in the game, to kind of combine each other to create like a virtual reality shooting experience that is a lot more than just dry fire. I mean, there's dry fire. You can get good technique in there, but it's also fun. It's interactive. It's social. There's leaderboards, and so we're really trying to take this into a new product category. So it's not just a training tool; it's shooting in virtual. So,
okay. Now I've not done anything virtual reality. So, does someone need any type of experience or expertise, or is this something that anybody can just pick up, connect, put on pretty easily?
yeah, so that's the really cool part about it. When you're playing the game, if you're a shooter and you get into it, you're going to be basically instantly nailing the targets. There might be a couple seconds of wonder and shock as you're looking around and seeing this whole new virtual environment around you. But besides just navigating the menus, normal computer stuff, there's not really a learning curve. You don't need to be a gamer. You just need to be a shooter or be willing to want to learn to become a shooter, because the buttons in the game, too, are not very complicated. There's basically pulling the trigger, the magazine release, one joystick, and then 2 single buttons. And that's basically everything that you're going to be doing in the game.
So, Tim, when you got the system, how long did it take you to get it up and running and start pulling the trigger for real?
I would say probably no more than 10, 15 minutes. So when you purchase the system, right? So like I was going to order the Quest 3 via like Meta right after Christmas or whatever, and actually ended up finding it at my local Walmart just down the road for, was it a Quest 3 $500? You can buy a Quest 2, and for all intents and purposes, if like you're really just more interested in kind of like the Ace system, I don't recommend anything more than a Quest 2 system to be able to run the Ace virtual reality on. So a Quest 2 costs you about $250, and it comes with everything you need. It comes with the headset, the 2 controllers, and then you basically you get on Ace's website and you sign up for a 1-year subscription. It's like $240. And I think it's like $20 for shipping or whatnot, and they ship you the controller. So basically, I ordered the Ace system like 2 days before I went out and bought the Quest 3, right? And so basically, by the time I had everything in hand, you put the controller in you put the Quest controller in the pistol, and you're basically ready to go. So you put on the headset. You had to download the Ace app, and it gives you a 6-digit PIN number when you sign on, you log in the first time, you type in the PIN number and you use the pistol basically just to point at everything. So everything is basically done with the trigger. So you plug in your ID PIN number or whatever, and boom, you're logged in the system. You're ready to go. So I mean, there was no like waiting for like these crazy software to be uploaded, and it takes a ton of memory and all of this stuff. I mean, it was literally a couple of keystrokes and a couple of strokes with the trigger to get set up on it, and you're in your what they call their hut, which is like your range clubhouse, and you're ready to shoot. You got everything from practice drills to drills of the day to all sorts of like drills. There anything between steel and paper to movement exercises to stand and shoot drills to, I mean, and of course, then there's other gaming aspects of it as well. There's like whack-a-mole where plates pop up at different distances. There's a zombie game. If you've got the Quest 360, you could do the hybrid reality stuff. So basically you're like watching balloons like inflate in your actual room that you're in, and you can shoot balloons. And there's tons of things that you can do with it that are secondary even to just the primary, like, okay, I'm going to use this as as like a supplement to dry fire, and shoot it just as like as a trainer. I mean, there's all sorts of things to be said about it and be able to do with it. But yeah, you can be up and running in 5 minutes, 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't do anything else virtual, so I guess I would do the Quest 2 then, because that would be the only thing I used it for. Now, I'm going to throw something on the screen real quick, and we'll get to it in a minute. But Noah, is there anything in particular I would miss if I didn't get the Quest 3?
Yeah, so there is a couple things that Tim missed. One of the biggest things I would say that's kind of like make it or break it for people is you want the Quest 3 if you wear glasses, because the lenses on the Quest 3 are a lot shallower and wider, and they allow basically any head size glasses shape to work with it. Where on the Quest 2, that can be a little bit of a nightmare. Additionally, just the other small perks besides the mixed reality thing, which we're looking to improve in the future, is just the resolution and frame rate is a little bit higher on the Quest 3. And as shooting is a visual sport, it's very important to be able to see well. So as somebody who's used to the Quest 3 now, going back to the Quest 2, it makes it harder. But if you're trying to save money, our handset's compatible with both. We ship it with both hooks. So you could buy a used Quest 2 on Facebook Marketplace or something. They're pretty cheap there. They're like $100, $120 because Quest 3 is out, and then you could upgrade it in the future. That's another option too. But the big thing is the glasses and the mixed reality. So
I went ahead and popped this comment up. One of the things I was going to ask you later is there, and we'll still get to it at some point, was as you go along and add stuff. I know I spoke with Connor, and I know there are and Aaron and you at Prairie Fire, and I know there are plans, but are there specific plans for specific models like this guy is asking, like Rick is asking?
Yeah, so we can't disclose any of that right now, but I will say that the way that this is designed, let's see if you can see it. You see there's a pin there and a pin there. So it's kind of a fire control unit system that holds the controller, and the frame just pops out with 2 pins. So we kind of future-proofed it. So as we do get more partnerships with other companies, we can look into, building out more official frames. So definitely a possibility in the future, but no concrete plans.
Okay. All right.
I will say, it just like kind of tossing my 2 cents in there. Like I've been primarily a 2011 shooter my entire career. So Matt Little has one of the original like staccato based 2011 original Ace pistols. Yeah. And which I was like, I'm sold. I got to have that. And I've really not found there to be any deficiency, like in my skill set at all. Running kind of the P320 style controller of the Artrix controllers now, as far as like, well, it's a hinge trigger versus a trigger bar trigger and all of those things. Like honestly, when you're pressing the trigger, whether it be in live fire or dry fire in the game or with different pistols, I've not personally noticed any kind of detriment to like, well, I'm training with this thing, but then when I go to dry fire with my 1911s or I'm going out to my actual range and shooting live fire, there's a significant difference. It's not been my experience at all.
Yeah, it might be a little bit more if you were shooting a CZ or a Glock, just because they have different grip angles. With Glock being steeper,
Yeah.
CZ kind of having the hump, and then the high.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about. But if you're shooting a Beretta 1911, 2011, 320, those sort of things with a more neutral and universal grip angle, then yeah,
Mhm.
this carries over. I shoot a 2011 myself, so it's basically the same index.
Yeah.
Now, Tim, I saw on Instagram where you set up a whole rig just for this.
I do, yeah. So and then so here's where I don't want to say it gets expensive, because it really doesn't have to get expensive. Like if
It
you've
gets
been
as
in
expensive as you want it, I
if
guess.
you've been in the practical shooting sports for longer than about 10 minutes, you've probably got a plethora of extra belts, old inner outer belts, as you kind of just go through different changes and things that you like, things that you don't like. So, I knew that I had, a couple of old like double alpha or CR speed, like inner and outer belts, set aside. Obviously you don't need mag pouches or anything for it, but knowing that it was a P320 style controller. Now, I will say the absolute what's the word I'm looking for? Like the measurements on the P3 on the Artrex controller versus like an actual P320, they're not exactly like thousandths to the thousandth in scale. So the controller tends to be just a little bit thicker than a standard P320. But like if you're running a single layer Kydex holster, or you've got an extra layer or an extra single layer Kydex holster. So for me, I have, I don't know, 2 or 3 old Blaytech holsters laying around. So I took the top retention screw out of one of my old Blaytech P320 holsters, and lo and behold, the pistol controller fits in it just perfectly. So like now I can work, like I can supplement my dry fire, with the exception of reloads and actual like gun handling and slide manipulation. I can supplement my dry fire as far as target transitions, stagecraft, things like that with the Ace system, and actually get in my reps too with the draw from a holster and all that good stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
even a cheap Blade Tech holster, I'm sure you could probably find one again, like on a Facebook Marketplace or
Yep.
a USPSA exchange or something for probably, peanuts, $20 to $50 or so. And like I said, I don't know a practical shooter out there that doesn't have at least 1 to 2 extra, like, inner and outer belts someplace. And so like I've got a belt rig set up for it. So there are times that I'll put the entire belt rig on and I want to work from the holster. And then there are other times that like you see somebody like absolutely, like crushing it on the, on the leaderboards, and they're not doing it from the holster. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to go from low ready, and I'm going to try to throw down some top scores on there too. But so, I mean, you can make it as realistic as you want, or it can be a game, I mean, but I see, just even as a trainer and somebody that like, I mean, I'm pretty emphatic about, my amount of dry fire time and live fire time and things. Like I see it as a legit training tool as well. It's not a replacement for dry fire, but it is a hell of a supplement for dry fire.
Yeah, and Tim, one thing to touch on, we're having an in-house holster that's going to be available relatively affordable. It's somewhere between $45 and $59. I don't know exactly where it's going to land, but
Will it be universal for lefties and right hand?
It will, yeah. Yeah, so the way we designed it, it's going to be, I believe, the normal 3-bolt pattern as well as QLS compatible, and on left and right side, and it's going to come stock with like a paddle, so that way anybody can kind of throw it on their belt or their jeans, but you can add an aftermarket attachment. So
yeah, so
that should be available around April.
Oh, April. Okay.
That's awesome.
So yeah, even if you had a stiff everyday carry belt, you can just use the paddle holster and slap it right in there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and the idea is to make it as accessible as possible. So it's not really aimed specifically at practical shooters. It's just anybody who wants to, use it with whatever clothing or belt that they're using. It can work, but you can also toss it onto a, inner outer competition belt and it'll work as well.
Very
now,
cool.
the one thing I did learn though at Prairie Fire from you guys, when we talked about appendix and concealed carry stuff, is that you just have to be careful with the clothing covering it, because then it messes with the sensors. But you can still put it in those positions. You just need to make sure that the sensors can sense it, and then you're good.
Yeah, and that's another kind of Quest 2 versus Quest 3 point too. You see, the Quest 2 has a ring on the outside, where the Quest 3 doesn't. So
Yeah.
if you're kind of doing inside the waistband draws, this gets in the way a little bit more. But
Looks like it's going to be the 3.
yeah, I think I'm printing.
Are you printing, or are you just happy to see me?
I don't know. But yeah,
Wow.
like you
Okay.
said, yeah, you want to make sure that it's not covered by, because sometimes it'll pick it up in time if you have a covered garment, but it's a lot more reliable, if you're just kind of like, sometimes if I'm shooting my carry gun at a match, I'll tuck in my shirt, use an appendix holster, and then use inside the waistband pouches. So I guess I'm not getting the full carry experience, but I'm still kind of practicing with my carry gear without the covered garment, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how you would have to use it in Ace. So
Yeah. And now, Tim, I got to ask you something, because I did about 6 years worth of training people in the 90s.
Mhm.
So when I was first playing with this, I was like, oh, and then when I saw that you could have more than one people in a room together, I was like, virtual training.
100%. So that's the biggest draw that I've got with it. And I've sat down with Noah and Connor both, and kind of expressed my interest in being able to utilize this system, as a trainer. So one of the things that I offer, for folks that can't possibly come to a class, is I offer 1 hour online or virtual training sessions where, like using things like Skype or Zoom, or FaceTime, in the comfort of your own home, and we can do things like either on the range or in dry fire together, like, at home, and help students that way. This just gives me a completely, like, a whole nother, spectrum of possibility to be able to work with a potential student, in a setting where we can actually share the range together. So I've actually utilized it once already for kind of a virtual training session
Ooh.
with a guy already, who was just like, dude, how are you shooting some of these particular arrays, and how are you doing this, and how are you doing that, and man, I'm trying to push this, and I just don't know what I'm, like, you kind of just don't know what you don't know, kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
scheduled a time, and we both jumped on together, and I was able to coach him through and increase his hit factor on a couple of the stages, significantly, just in, like, being able to, like, him being able to, like, see what he needs to see, being able to, and like, experiment with things too. So, a couple of things that I've got, kind of in the fold. I've been keeping notes and things that I like, things that I really, really like. Obviously, I kind of report back to Noah, not quite daily, but I say I'm kind of keeping him informed, a couple times a week on things that I see, things that I like. There haven't been really many things that I don't like, other than, I wish there was a way to adjust the dot brightness in the game. I think that's something that
Mm.
maybe for future, that would be really, really cool, because for me, it's very, very bright. I wish you could dim it down a little bit. I think it would also be neat to kind of play around with, like, dot occlusion, uh,
yep.
and being able to incorporate that in the game as well, especially for people that are kind of new to red dots. This is a great way to get a ton of reps and a ton of time in behind a gun with a dot, without having to go to the range and break the bank with ammunition to do so. And then a couple of the other things too would be, like, from a training aspect, it would be neat to be able to do a shared screen with somebody kind of in that multiplayer room, where I actually am seeing what they're seeing behind their goggles, right? So, like, as they're bringing the gun up, am I seeing what they're seeing, as far as, are they aligning the dot to the target? Are they stopping the gun on the target when they're pressing the trigger? Or are they sweeping the gun through? So that, as an instructor, those are some of the things then you can also then go back and be like, hey, I saw you do this. And they're like, no, 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 I didn't. I'm like, yeah, but I saw it. Like, I legit you saw. And I think that's a really cool feature, that we can't crawl inside somebody's brain or inside their eyes on the range and see what they're seeing. But something like this is the next best thing. And it's something that would allow you to truly be able to see what a shooter sees, or what a student sees behind the gun. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I've got tons of ideas and tons of things, and that I think would make the system very viable for trainers, to be able to utilize as well for virtual training, and, you know, virtual sessions too. So,
Now, and Noah's, I know it's a subscription service. Um, But there's just one level, correct? Like one
Yes,
level of
sir.
subscription you get. So
Yeah.
you don't have to like tier it out or anything.
Yeah, currently, so we just launched basically publicly about 7 weeks ago or so. So right now we just have an annual subscription, 228 a year. That comes with the gun, comes with access to the app. The only thing else you need is the headset. So,
Okay.
but
And
there is room potentially for other tiers and stuff like that in the future. But we just, we're not there yet.
So,
okay.
if I may, one of the
Yeah.
things, one of the biggest concerns I see from folks that are interested in the system, and they're like, I wish it were just a flat, even if it were $100, and that was it, and you just got everything. And I've tried to tell people, I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing, right? Development costs a lot of money, right? And it costs a lot of time for engineers and developers to continually add new things to the system. The leaderboards constantly refresh weekly. So the scores you set today are not the scores that are going to stand next week, and you're going to have to do it all over again. That takes time for somebody to go in there and continuously update those things as well. So the 200, like I look at it, $240 or $230, and you get the controller with it as well. It seems kind of pricey, but at the end of the day, like as practical shooters, I looked at that $230 cost as like, well, dude, that's a cost of one case. That's one case, 1,000 round case of 9mm ammo. And in the 3.5 weeks I've been using the system, I've exceeded 90,000 trigger presses, 90,000 rounds expended in the system for 200 for the cost of one case of ammo. Like, come on now. So like in the grand scheme
Yeah.
of things, it's a drop in the bucket at $230 a year for a subscription for everything that you're getting in the system and the constant updates, the constant additions to things that Noah and the crew have got in store to continually add and make the system viable for not only just a fun game but also a trainer.
Yeah, and to touch on that, Tim, so we have a U.S. based development team in house. We're not outsourcing anything. Everybody's very dedicated to the game, and we try to release new updates every couple of weeks. So 2 to 3 weeks is what we aim for. New guns, new stages. There should be a new update coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. But some very exciting things in there.
Okay. Well, and Tim, I think you're being generous with the price of ammo because I think a case of 9mm is probably averaging about $300. So
It kind of depends on what you buy. Like
it does.
CCI Blazer, a case of CCI Blazer from a couple different places, about $230, $240 shipped to your door. So, I mean, so basically looking at it for a case of cheap ammo is what you're getting, in the Ace system. And like I said, I mean, the possibilities are endless. So
Yeah, I mean, I was using $300 as an average, which I don't think is
yeah,
outrageous. That's $27,000 you just spent virtually.
yep.
It actually says that in the game where you shoot, you look, the brass piles up. I think it's 8.5 or 9,000 rounds of 9 per brass bucket, kind of like real life, and they just stack up in the corner. It says how many rounds you shot and how much money you saved based on, I don't know if it's 25 or 30 cents a round, something like that. So
Yep.
Okay, yeah. There's $250 to $300 a case. Yeah, about right.
Yeah.
There's a few folks too that have expressed, concern like, well, of course you like it. It's a gimmick. It's something new, and it's going to be good for, a week or two, and then you're just going to get bored with it. Well, I mean, I am not a gamer. I didn't grow up in the video game era. I'm a kind of like early or late bloomer Gen Xer, right? So like we were at the advent of Nintendo and Sony PlayStation and things like that. But I've never been like an adamant gamer, one of these guys that buys everything. So for me, I didn't see the value in it as like, oh, this is a really cool video game system. Like I said, I saw this as a great, like a great addition to what I'm already doing in dry fire and things. And it's keeping it fresh and interesting, and then when you get new people all the time kind of entering in the domain as well, and then all of a sudden you see your name kind of topple down the leaderboard and you're like, oh, hang on a minute. Let me get my stuff back out. I gotta show these show these guys, who's boss kind of thing. There's that hunger and that desire to want to continuously like push yourself as well. So it's really cool, and it's giving you an opportunity to do things that you've always wanted to do at the range, but because of the cost of ammo and the restrictions in place and just what the cost of things cost, like you wouldn't set up the same drill and shoot it 375 times, over and over and over again. And the other thing
Right.
about the Ace system too is you never have to reset steel. You don't have to paint it. You
Yeah.
don't have to paste targets. You just hit A, boop, and everything just resets again, and you're back in business. So, and if you make a mistake on something, you can immediately just reset it and go back and do it again. So, like I see it from the learning aspect, from a learner, from that aspect of just run it and run it and run it and experiment and try things that you wouldn't otherwise get to do in real life because of, well, I only brought 300 rounds to the range with me today, or while I've only got an hour to spend. It's like, man, in an hour on Ace, you could easily go through 2,000 rounds pretty quick.
Yeah.
Now, Tim, can you see that comment on the screen?
I can.
Okay. Yeah. Nick's asking, how does the system benefit you more than the same amount of trigger presses of dry fire using your action pistol?
For one, the trigger is constantly live, right? So in dry fire, whether you're using a Glock or a 1911 or anything like that, 1911s are a little more forgiving because obviously as you press through the wall, you take up the slack and then the hammer falls. You still get some movement in the trigger to constantly be able to press the trigger in dry fire. Whereas, like I say, a Glock, once the trigger goes dead after that first initial press to releases the striker, the trigger is dead. And now you're just pressing against a dead trigger into the frame, which does have some value. But at the same thing, because you're initiating movement or implementing movement in the frame of the gun that you're trying to arrest with grip. But with the Ace system, like as you release the trigger releases and you get a wall, you get a sear that breaks a trigger all the time. So you're getting a constant trigger every single time without having to reload the gun, without having to worry about, okay, the hammer's fallen and now I've got a dead trigger. Like you're pressing the real deal every time.
Well, and the other thing we talked about too before we went live, the three of us, I think this is a good time, Tim, to talk about grip pressure and trigger control.
Oh, absolutely. So the way the gyro sensors are in the controller, they're extremely sensitive to any movement at all as you're moving or as you're pressing the trigger. If you're incapable of arresting movement in the gun, like with a good support hand grip to hold the pistol still, as you're manipulating the trigger, you're going to steer the dot or steer the sights completely off the target or off of your intended point of aim. So, I'm not joking when I say in 90,000 plus trigger presses, and the countless hours that I've got kind of even behind the system now, I've overdone it. I've got a little bit of tendonitis in my dominant hand, simply from, and not from over gripping with my dominant hand, but from basically countering or applying a push against the backstrap of the gun while my support hand is just squeezing the life out of the controller in order to be able to press the trigger, in 1,500 splits and not have the dot or not have the sights move off target. So you're getting all of the same repetition with the true feedback that sometimes we're missing or we might be looking for in dry fire, that we kind of sometimes cheat ourselves out of. The Ace system's not going to allow you to cheat that. If you do, you're going to have sloppy trigger presses and sloppy shots as a result.
Yeah, and to build on that, Tim, also, targets you can't shoot in dry fire, like movers, swingers, clamshells, Texas
Absolutely.
Stars, all that sort of thing. And you did touch on this, but that feedback. So you're going to be able to see your hits. And people say, well, if you're dry firing, you should be able to call your shots. But if you're doing a Blake drill in 1.6 seconds in dry fire, like, do you really know those were all A-zone presses when you're doing it? Like, you don't know. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So getting that feedback too, there's some other things too, like in the drill section, I'm sorry, not the drill section, in the, what's the three? So there's like the games and then there's the drills and then there's
skills and thrills.
Yeah. So in the skills section, there's there's like 5 open targets, one at 5 yards, one at 10 yards, or 7, one at 10, one at 15, and one at 20. That you can, it's just a free for all, right? So, and the great thing is there's like basically like a dry erase or a chalkboard that's kind of a reflection, or almost like a shot call board that's
Yeah.
right next to you. So as you're moving, and I work on that a lot, where you could transition the gun and play everything from like distance change up to working on just shot calling directly out of the holster, to multiple shots, to everything at different distances on that. And I'll play around in that domain for 20 to 30 minutes almost daily. And then you get the live feedback directly on that dry erase board right next to you. Hey, the 2 shots that I just fired at 20, I don't have to walk down range and paste up the target and see where my hits are at. Your hits are reflected right there on this target that's right next to you, where you can see like instant time. Hey, those were 2 alphas. That first alpha was high. I felt like it was, or that second alpha was low. I felt myself dipping the gun as I pressed the trigger. And so you can focus on correcting those things.
Yeah, and I want to add a couple of things real quick, Noah. When you were letting me test it, I like you actually ran a drill, and it showed the hits on the target, and it showed them in different colors. So the red were deltas, the yellows were Charlies, and the green were alphas, which I liked as well. So you could see, on the target where you're actually impacting. And Nick, I'm going to say this. This is one of those things where, if you have a normal, 40-hour work week with commute times and all that, and you come home and it may be one of those times you're like, I don't feel like dry firing, I'm tired. I think this game is one of those game changers where it's like, you know what? This is fun. I am getting that instant feedback. I can see what I'm doing. You can plan it like a normal trip to the range where you're like, all right, this is what I'm working on today. This is what I'm doing.
Yep.
It literally does change it. And I was gripping that pistol when I first started to shoot it. I was like, oh boy, I'm terrible. My dot's all over the place. I'm like, I got to grip this thing for real. Mm-hmm. So I was literally gripping it like I'm shooting a stage to hold that dot still to go where I need to go. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, and to answer his point, yes. So as soon as you finish a stage, you press kind of the button that says I'm finished, which would be like, if finished, unload and show clear. If you're actually shooting a drill, you press the button, then it'll show the hits. Before then, you can see the hits, kind of like in real life. You can see holes on the target, but you can't see the actual colors of the hits or any of the extra information.
Yeah, the extra information, right? So you get green circles around the hits if they're alphas, you get yellow circles around the hits if they're Charlies, and you get orange circles around the hits if you shoot deltas. So, but nobody shoots those around here. But yeah, so, and that's really cool to give you that feedback after the fact as well. But I mean, like the great thing about it is the realism itself, like how the dot is reflected in the back of the glass. Like if you're using a red dot. So if you barely move the controller, say 1 degree left, right, high, or low, that dot, right, the holographic dot, just like a real red dot, that dot is reflected either high of the glass, low of the glass. So you get it's not like when you just present the pistol out there, the dot's always in the center and you play around with it. Like, it's not like that at all. So if you've got a bad presentation in real life, guess what? You're probably going to have a bad presentation in the game as well. So if you're hunting around for the dot in real life, guess what? You're probably going to hunt around for the dot, a bit too, trying to learn exactly what your presentation needs to be. Iron sights work the same way. They've done their homework, especially just with the ballistics as well and the feedback. So like even on the iron sight guns, if you're deviating the front sight to the left side of the rear notch or right side of the rear notch or high or low, that deviation standard is reflexive the exact same way as it is in real life. Meaning if I'm running the front sight as high as it will go in the rear notch at a target that's a distance of 10 to 15 yards, even within the game, it can still be an alpha as long as the rear sight's centered on the target, but that shot's going to be like very, very high, top kind of cuts the top of the perforation of the A zone. So that Alpha Charlie line, if you deviate it left, right, or low, you get the same deviation levels that you do in reality within the game as well. So, if you transition the gun and you're trying to steer the gun dot first instead of steering the back of the gun to the target, and you expect the dot to be there, good luck, because it's not going to be there because you're steering the gun around, separate from your entire structure. So, like, it's got amazing feedback that is, I mean, I want to say it's just like it is shooting the real thing, sans a loud bang in your house and holes all over the place. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the thing that Noah even demonstrated when I was there is that you can use activators for swingers and things. It's not just, oh, I have a swinger out there virtually to shoot at. You can actually work on timing with hitting activators and then swingers. And I was even just with the Texas Stars, it was like, oh yeah, getting that timing down, working on hitting those plates before
Oh,
the
yeah.
thing starts going, crazy on you. So,
And even on the activators, you brought that up. Depends on where you hit them. So if you hit them closer to the top, they're going to fall faster. It's going to activate sooner. If you hit them like right at the bottom of where it would be calibrated, it's going to go and then go like this. So all of that is reflected accurately. You brought up, the ballistics, the height over bore. So like, for example, the open gun with the frame mounted dot has a higher height over bore than the slide ride guns, and that's affected too on the zeros. So like that gun, currently we're not able to zero the guns, but that is coming in the future. Same thing with kind of the dot intensity and the notch filter you were talking about. All those in color, all those will be adjustable in the future when we have our customization overhaul. But the zero, it's cool because with the higher height over bore than with a 15-yard zero, you're going to get more deviation on the 40-yard targets than you would. So all the ballistics are, basically spot on. Including if you're in the VTAC barricade shooting sideways, all that will function just like it would in real life. So,
wow. Now, Tim, what's the favorite thing about the system for you to practice on? Is there anything in particular to like, this is the one thing I practice all the time with this?
Yeah. So like I had mentioned earlier, in the skill building section, which it's kind of an untimed. I wish there was a way you could utilize the timer in that, so you could work on like draw to presentation and things like that in there, separate from like a drill with a leaderboard. Is I work on the kind of that distance change up where I can focus on things like accelerator. I can work on designated target drills, where you've got 5 targets at varying distances, and you can just work. And I spend a majority of my time in there, like literally utilizing the system as I feel it was designed for my benefit, which is a drill. So like I'll work in that and work different transitional drills for quite a while, and then I'll go into like the actual drills category, or and shoot some of the stages. Stages that I really enjoy shooting a lot are the there's 2 versions. One's called Don't Miss, and the other one's called Don't Miss Classic. So, and it's got like steel plates at about 15 to 18 yards with like no shoots behind them. So it's a very, very high risk, but also high reward stage. And then there's another stage called Movers, which has got 2 poppers that activate a moving target and a swinging target, with also 5 plates too. And just work in different scenarios or different sequences of target sequencing on those. I really enjoy that one as well. It really drives your eyes to picking up, am I just sweeping the gun through steel, or am I really stopping the gun like I need to? In real life, I've never really been a huge fan of Steel Challenge. However, having the leaderboards and all the Steel Challenge stages within the game too, to kind of play with and experiment with as well, has been kind of eye-opening, and it's something I've kind of missed out on in years past by not shooting Steel Challenge matches. And this gives me an opportunity to kind of play around with different sequences and things for Steel Challenge as well, which has been a lot of fun. It's very engaging.
Tim, something to touch on super quick is on the paper zeroing range you're talking about, or any of the open ranges, you can use the shot timer. So what you do is you put the gun kind of over it. The shot timer will highlight and get a white outline, and you press the A button to kind of push the shot timer. It'll give you a randomized beep, and then it'll record all your splits. You can go back down on it and go through your splits. So you can use it on any of the ranges.
That would have been nice to know, Noah.
Well, I didn't even know if it worked on that specific range. I knew it worked on the open ranges. I didn't know if it worked on the paper zeroing range, but I just checked real quick. So
very cool. Okay.
I heard the beep.
Yeah,
I got all sweaty when it beeped.
I forgot what I was thinking about.
All right.
So, but yeah,
Now,
I mean, and there's other stages that I'm just like, I don't know. I'll spend a little time with it. But the great thing is there's a plethora of things to do, and some are probably going to tickle your fancy a little bit more than others. So like me, I've never been a big like bill drill or Mozambique drill or like the shooting from retention stuff. To me, is like meh, it's okay. But I'll spend a little time, kind of like trying to post some good scores or things like that on there once in a while, because I do find there is some value, like some small intrinsic value on those particular stages as well. But yeah, I mean, other things that really kind of that really tickle me a lot, are, like I said, are like the movers, moving plates, and some of the actual like USPSA style stages as well.
Yeah, and something really fun, Tim, once you get more room to play around with, is really practicing like the finesse of movement, which I'm sure you know all about, but you can really fine tune it. You can be like, should I do 2 side steps here? Should I decelerate here? Should I start pre-aiming this corner here or here? And you can really kind of tune in on some of those things.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun.
And I think the thing I like about Steel Challenge is, if you ask me, it's the best competition for draw to first shot and transitions.
Sure.
So
that's all it is,
Exactly. So having that ability in virtual reality and being able to shoot that really gives you something to kind of focus on and get good there.
Yep.
But the other thing, and you had mentioned it, I'm starting to see more and more moving targets at matches, and I think there's going to be some at Area 8, and there are actual, and I'm not talking bobbers and swingers and things, and drop turners, but actual moving targets in this system. So people can actually practice leading the target, engaging the target, so maintaining trigger control as they are engaging an actual moving target. So
I think that would be really cool to add to also just like instead of just in the drills, to add to kind of like the skill building side of things too, like with the accelerator drill, it's just a single steel and a swinger, right? Or a single steel and a clamshell, where you could just focus on, or maybe a multitude of different steel targets, and like getting comfortable. How many steel targets can you squeeze in before the clamshell closes? Or, maybe a drop turner target or a swinger, being able to add swingers that have like no shoots attached to them or hardcover on them, making swingers even harder, I think would be. Now, I know some of the other people that are probably using the Ace system are like, shut up, Tim. But I think it would be cool, because
that stuff is super fun.
I think those are the things that you're seeing truly in matches, and very, very limited visibility. Swingers that where you don't get just on a dwell, but swingers that you only get like a wall, and you only get to see it like it's mid swing too, would be. I think those would be great things to also work on, like skill building. That cross over right into reality, not just neat challenges for within the system as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing you touched on there too is kind of like practicing these things that you can't do in real life. And something that's going to be the next update, I'll give a little sneak peek, is going to be something we're calling series mode. So series are basically a combination of drills stringed together that create a match environment. So you get one try to shoot these 4 stages in a row, and when you're doing that, instead of kind of going the 110% that you're going on some of these things to try to get these leaderboard skills or leaderboard runs, you're going to have to run them more like a match, and not like shoot them consistently. And especially once, for example, last Thursday we did a live match on our Discord. I know you just joined Discord, so you didn't know about it, Tim. But basically, somebody was like, "Oh, we should shoot Steel Challenge," and I was like, "Why don't we do it on Thursday?" And basically, we had a couple people in there on multiplayer. We all ran through 4 different stages, 5 times each. I just pulled the data from the back end and manually crunched it. But in the future, we'll be able to, have that in the game and have, matches you could register for and go to and get that match pressure in like your dry fire. Where else are you getting that? Like
Right.
yeah, and like you said, you're really busy training people, so you only really shoot majors. You said for the most part, and
Yep.
you're not able to shoot as many matches as you want. For me, I have a 3-year-old. I'm busy. I'm working all the time, and I only probably shoot 10 to 12 matches a year, and that's going to be really good for me to kind of simulate that match pressure and know where my limit is, and really train that, and know when I can push, know what type of targets I have to kind of pull back on and be a little bit more careful on, and to get the best scores to my abilities. So
That's
All right.
super awesome.
So that brings a couple of questions. One of the things I wanted to get into at some point was squad competition and virtual matches, like the old postal matches,
Mhm.
but virtual.
yeah,
And two, something Tim was talking about earlier, being able to see someone's screen. What if, let's say I'm so we'll talk about the postal match thing in just a moment. That's part A of the question. Part B, let's say I'm a student of Tim's, and Tim's like, I want you to run he sends me an email and says, hey, I want you to run this drill and this drill in the ACE system. Is there a way for me to save what I did and for Tim to review what I
yeah,
did?
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So there's 2 ways you could do that. Number one, I know you said Tim before, with the Zoom call and be able to see what they're doing live. You could actually do that right now. The way you would set that up is, as I'm sure you know, on the Oculus, you can cast to either a computer or a television. So what you could do is cast their dominant eye to your computer screen, and then they're like on Zoom, basically they would use their camera to show their grip and stance, and then share their screen at the same time, and then they could share that cast. So you'd be able to see what they're seeing and see what they're doing at the same time as you're kind of monitoring them. You wouldn't be able to be in headset at the same time. But we have talked, internally about maybe adding that to our mobile app, which we do have a mobile app. I don't know if you're on there yet, but we're looking to build that out more and more in the future, add push notifications, all that sort of thing to get people more engaged and like, hey, Tim just beat your high score. You should jump on and do it. Uh, but yeah, no. So that is stuff we're looking to add. And Dave, sorry, I forgot the second half of your question.
Virtual matches like postal matches, squad competitions, like holding a virtual practical shooting match with a
Yeah,
group of people.
yeah. So something we're looking to do soon with these series. So the series are going to be implemented in the next update when that goes live, and you'll have leaderboards for those, kind of like you do now. But in the future, we want to have them be like weekly challenges. So like right now, we have daily challenges, which I forgot if it was this morning or last morning, but I logged on at like 7:50, and you had already shot your daily challenge of the day, and I'm like, this guy Tim, like I did not beat
He
you. You got like
doesn't sleep. He won't
you,
put it down.
yeah, you got like a 17 on plate rack, and I got like a 15. But we're looking to add like weekly series challenge, so there might be 3 series for this week, and then it's kind of the same system where you could try it up to 3 times, and you get your best score out of 3 to account for if your toddler is jumping on your leg, or somebody's yelling at you, whatever it is, you get a couple of extra tries. But kind of your best score, your best run out of 3 tries for the week for a couple different stages. That's something we're looking to add. So that would be kind of like a weekly postal match, Dave, to answer that. And in the future, we want to have some live matches too, whether those are in person. These are just potential things we've talked about, but also they could be online. It could be, you could run, Ace Nationals over the course of a week, for example, and you could squad up. Hopefully this will be on our mobile app in the future. Some stuff similar to practice course, so you can kind of like say like, oh, we're gonna shoot at 9 p.m. on Thursday night, and then you meet your buddies there. You're shooting it, but be able to review kind of the times, the hit factors, all the kind of data that you expect from practical shooting. So something we're looking
Talk
into.
smack.
Yeah. So both we call them asynchronous or synchronous, which synchronous is like live, so live competition, but also asynchronous, which is basically like there's an objective and then people are shooting the same thing over a certain amount of time, and then kind of your scores are tallied up at the end of the time period allotted. So,
Okay. Anything coming out for rifle stuff in the future? Any talk of that?
yeah, so it would be really cool in VRPS that that kind of alpha version of the game that I talked about before. There was rifle support there. I do have my own rifle controller that only works on that game. It's 3D printed. It takes AR stocks and all that sort of thing. It's super awesome, but just because this is not basically we need to tread carefully with scary black rifle type of things in terms of being on the meta platform. So that's our biggest concern with adding rifles, just because generally handguns are viewed as defensive weapons, rifles are kind of more offensive weapons, and we need to make sure that we don't get deplatformed by Facebook in the future. So
Okay.
but it's definitely a possibility. It's just not a right now type thing.
Okay. Gotcha. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you guys think we should discuss? I'm not seeing anything that sticks out on my list.
Goodness, I don't know. I think we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah. And I the only thing I will add is Noah ran like some type of mini stage again in Nevada. And I mean, you were shooting low ports because you had to get down on a knee to be able to shoot through a low port. So, I mean, I'm not aware. As I was trying to think about it later, I'm like, if you can do all of that and you had set up boxes, like you moved from one spot to another and you were shooting while you were moving and ending. I mean, I can't think really of, I almost feel like the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, they are, and really, it's kind of down to the size constraint you can play it in. So if you have a big area like a gym or a giant living room or a ballroom or something like that, you could potentially run full size USPSA stages on it. Supports full movement, like you said. Also, squatting, shooting over things, shooting around things. All of that is already in the game. So yeah, the possibilities really there are endless. That being said, we kind of designed our stages based on assuming people have a smaller amount of area to play, because not everybody has a large basement or gym to run around, and we want to make sure our content is accessible to as many people as possible. So,
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, if that's everything, then I appreciate you guys coming on. I think there will be a lot of people who will listen to this and get some benefit from it, and maybe it'll answer some of their questions like Nick's about what it can and can't do and the benefits.
Almost definitely.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And thank you guys for watching.
Yeah. Dave, thanks for having us on.
thank you, Dave. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it a lot.